There's a special kind of cold that sets in not from the weather, but from a voice on the phone. The kind that slithers down your spine and settles in the pit of your stomach, a little ice cube of dread that refuses to melt. It was December 22nd. Outside my tiny apartment, the world was trying its best to be festive. Flickering lights, the faint smell of wood smoke, the sound of someone somewhere laughing. Inside, it was just me and my 6-year-old daughter, Lily, who was carefully constructing a lopsided gingerbread house, her little tongue poked out in concentration. She'd covered it in a truly alarming number of gumdrops. It was perfect. The phone rang. I saw the name on the screen, Mom, and that ice cube pulsed. My parents' calls were never just calls. They were inspections, assessments. Clara, my mother's voice was crisp, a dry martini of a greeting. Your father and I are finalizing the plans for Christmas Eve. I felt a flicker of hope, fragile as a soap bubble. It had been a brutal year. The divorce finalized, the move to this showbox apartment, the constant, grinding anxiety of being a single mom, of making ends meet on a secretary's salary. The thought of walking into my parents' warm, sprawling house, of smelling my father's pipe tobacco and seeing the giant tree towering in their living room. It felt like a lifeline. We'd love to come, Mom, I said, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. Lily's been talking about Grandpa's eggnog for weeks. There was a pause, the kind of pause my mother used as a weapon. I could hear the clink of fine china in the background. Well, that's the thing, Clara, she said, her tone shifting to one of pained regret. This year, it's just going to be a very intimate gathering. Just family, the bubble popped. We are family, Mom. You know what I mean, dear. Your brother, Mark, is bringing his new girlfriend, Beatrice. Her family is very well connected. And with your sister, Sarah, and the twins, well, the house is just bursting at the seams. There's simply no space for you and Lily this year. No space for you and Lily. The words hung in the air, toxic and final. I looked at my daughter, her hands sticky with icing, her face alight with the simple joy of creation. She had no idea that her own grandparents were drawing a line in the sand, and we were on the wrong side of it. We were the messy, complicated, poor side of the family, the side that didn't fit the perfect Christmas card image. Mom, I said, my voice trembling, it's Christmas. She's your only grandchild, and we'll have a lovely video call with her on the day itself, she said, her voice bright and utterly hollow. It's just more practical this way. You understand, don't you? With everything you're going through, it's probably for the best. Less stress for you. The audacity of it stole my breath. She was framing her rejection as a benevolent act. A favor. I understand, I whispered, the lye ash in my mouth. Wonderful. We'll talk soon, dear. Give Lily a kiss from me. The line went dead. I stood there, the phone clutched in my hand, the silence of the apartment roaring in my ears. Lily looked up. Was that Grandma? Are we going to see the big tree? I knelt down, my knees cracking on the cheap linoleum, and pulled her into a hug, smelling the sweet, sugary scent of her hair. Not this year, sweetheart. But you know what? We're going to have our own super special Christmas. Just you and me. Her little face fell for a second, then brightened with forced, beautiful bravery. Okay, Mommy. We have our own tree. She pointed to the small, sparse artificial tree in the corner, its lights blinking bravely in the dim room. I held her tight, my heart shattering into a million pieces. The rejection was one thing. I was used to their disappointment. But doing this to Lily? To an innocent child who just wanted to be loved by her grandparents. That night, after I'd put her to bed, I scrolled through social media, a form of emotional self-flagellation I'd never learned to quit. And there it was, a post from my sister, Sarah. So excited for the full family Christmas Eve extravaganza at Mom and Dad's. The whole crew will be there. Hashtag family first. Hashtag Christmas chaos. Attached was a picture of their living room. It was vast. There were 2 empty couches. There was enough floor space to land a helicopter. No space for you and Lily. The ice cube in my stomach exploded, flooding my veins with a cold, clear fury. I cried then, hot, silent tears of humiliation and rage. They didn't want us. We were an inconvenience, a blemish on their perfect holiday. But as I sat there in the dark, watching the colored lights from our pathetic little tree reflect in the window, the fury began to harden into something else, something solid, something determined. They thought we were a sad story, a footnote. They had no idea who they were dealing with. They had no idea what a mother backed into a corner was truly capable of. Christmas Eve dawned gray and silent, the kind of silence that feels heavy, expectant. Lily, bless her, was still putting on a brave face, but I saw the confusion in her eyes when she saw the 2 small presents under our tree instead of the mountain she was used to at her grandparents'. Are we really not going to Grandma's at all? She asked over a breakfast of pancakes I'd tried to make festive with red and green sprinkles. Not this year, baby, I said, my voice artificially bright. We're having an adventure. Just us. The adventure was a trip to the free botanical garden Christmas display and a picnic of peanut butter sandwiches in the car, watching the snow fall. It was the best I could do. And she, my resilient, beautiful girl, pretended it was the greatest day of her life. Her performance was better than mine. We got home, cold and tired, to the quiet of the apartment. I put on a cartoon for her and finally let my own mask slip. The self-pity was a tempting blanket, but I refused to wrap myself in it. Instead, I picked up my phone. The self-flagellation ritual continued. I opened Instagram, and I stopped breathing. There it was. The Christmas Eve post. From my mother, a perfectly staged photograph. The whole family was there. My brother, Mark, with his arm around the elegant, unfamiliar Beatrice. My sister, Sarah, and her husband beaming, their perfect twins on their laps. My mother and father, seated regally in wingback chairs, glasses of sherry in their hands. Everyone was wearing matching burgundy sweaters. And the caption that felt like a physical blow to the solar plexus. My heart is so full. There's nothing like having all your children and grandchildren under one roof for Christmas. This is what true family is all about. So blessed. Hashtag family is everything. Hashtag Christmas memories. Hashtag all my children, all your children, all me children. The hypocrisy was so vast, so breathtaking, it made the room spin. They had literally told me there was no space, and here they were, proclaiming to the world a unity that explicitly excluded my daughter and me. We were ghosts at their feast, erased. I stared at the picture, my vision blurring with tears of pure, undiluted rage. I zoomed in. I looked at their smiling, smug faces. I looked at the empty space on the rug next to the twins. The space where Lily should have been, giggling and tearing open a present. And then I saw it, on the mantelpiece, right between my mother's head and my father's, in a place of honor, was a photograph. It was a professional family portrait, taken 2 years ago, back when I was still married, still part of the perfect picture. There we all were, me, my then husband, a younger Lily, all smiling vacantly. A fossil, a relic of a time when I was still convenient. They had put out a picture of us, while actively excluding the living, breathing reality of us. That was the moment. The moment the last thread of hope I'd held for my family snapped. The moment the heartbreak solidified into something else entirely. A plan. It was a reckless, insane plan. But looking at my daughter, curled up and asleep on the couch, her thumb near her mouth, a habit she'd kicked but returned to when she felt insecure, I knew I had to do it. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't plead. I wouldn't post an angry, emotional comment on their picture for all their friends to see. No, I would give them exactly what they wanted. A perfect family Christmas. I got to work. I moved quietly so as not to wake Lily. I packed a bag for her pajamas, her favorite stuffed elephant, Elmer, a change of clothes. I threw on my own coat, my hands shaking not from fear, but from a cold, focused certainty. I woke her gently. Hey, sweetie, we're going on a surprise adventure. She blinked sleepily. Now? In the dark? Right now, I said, lifting her into my arms, wrapping her in a blanket. The best adventures happen in the dark. I carried her down to the car, buckled her in, and drove. The roads were quiet, empty. Everyone was already where they were supposed to be. The snow fell in soft, relentless waves, painting the world in a clean, silent white. It felt like the universe was erasing everything, giving me a blank slate. I drove towards the part of town where the houses grew farther apart, where the driveways were long and lined with trees. I drove towards my parents' house. I wasn't going to knock. I wasn't going to beg for entry. I pulled over 100 yards from their driveway, the car hidden by a thicket of pines. The house was a vision of festive perfection. Every window glowed. The outlines of the massive Christmas tree were visible in the front window. I could see shadows moving inside. Laughing, talking shadows. Are we at Grandma's? Lily whispered, her voice small. Just for a minute, baby, I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. We're just going to look at the lights. From right here, I pulled out my phone. I opened the camera. I switched it to video. This wouldn't be an angry comment. It would be a documentary. I would capture their perfect Christmas, with their "all my children" caption ringing in my ears. I would film the truth of their exclusion, and I would hold it up like a mirror. But not yet. First, I had to get closer. Stay here, my love, I said to Lily, kissing her forehead. I'll be right back. I'm just going to get a better look for you. I got out of the car. The cold air hit me like a slap, sharp and clarifying. I walked quietly through the snow, my boots making no sound, until I was standing at the edge of their property, hidden in the shadow of a large spruce tree. I could hear them now, the clink of glasses, my father's booming laugh, my mother's tinkling soprano, the sound of my nephew shrieking with joy, and I started to record. I panned slowly across the front of the house, a stark, beautiful monument to our exclusion. This was the evidence. This was the crime scene. I was so focused on the window, on the ghosts of my family moving behind the glass, that I didn't hear the footsteps behind me until it was too late. A hand landed on my shoulder. I spun around, my phone nearly falling from my numb fingers. It was my father. He was holding a bag of garbage for the bin, his expression one of utter shock. Clara? He breathed, his breath a cloud in the frigid air. What in God's name are you doing out here? I stood there, caught, the phone still recording, the truth of my humiliation and my revenge laid bare in the freezing night. The game was up before it had even begun. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. My father baffled and alarmed in his crisp Christmas sweater. Me, a trespasser on my own childhood lawn, a spy in the cold. Clara, he repeated, his voice softer now, laced with a confusion that felt genuine. All my planned defiance, my cold fury, evaporated, leaving only a raw, shivering shame. The phone felt like a brick in my hand. I fumbled to stop the recording, my fingers clumsy with cold and adrenaline. I had no lie prepared. The truth was too pathetic. His eyes moved past me, toward the road, and widened. Is Lily in the car? The concern in his voice, the sudden shift from confusion to grandfatherly alarm, shattered the last of my composure. A sob escaped my throat, harsh and ugly in the silent night. He didn't say another word. He dropped the garbage bag right there in the snow, took off his own thick woolen coat, and wrapped it around my shoulders. It was warm from his body and smelled of pipe tobacco and the wood fire from inside. The scent of my childhood, of safety. It undid me completely. "Come on," he said, his voice low and firm. He took my elbow, not with anger, but with a startling gentleness, and guided me not towards the house, but towards my car. He opened the passenger door and saw Lily, wide awake now, her eyes huge in the dark. "Grandpa," she squealed. "Hello, my little dove," he said, his voice transforming into the warm, rumbling tone he reserved only for her. "You and your mom are coming inside right now. It's freezing out here." "No, Dad, we can't," I choked out. Mom said, "There's no space." He looked at me then, a profound, weary sadness in his eyes that I had never seen before. "Clara," he said quietly, "this is my house too." He unbuckled Lily, lifted her out, and carried her, blanket and all, towards the glowing home. I followed, a sleepwalker, my father's coat hanging heavy on my shoulders. He didn't go through the front door. He led us around to the side, through the kitchen entrance. The warmth and noise hit me like a wall. The smell of roasting turkey, cinnamon, pine. The sound of Frank Sinatra singing about having yourself a merry little Christmas. The kitchen was empty. Everyone was in the living room. "Stay here," my father said, setting Lily down on a stool. He handed her a stray cookie from a platter. "You warm up. I need to talk to your grandmother." He disappeared through the swinging door into the heart of the party. I could hear the laughter and chatter dip for a moment, then resume. Lily looked at me, her face a mixture of confusion and delight. "Are we having Christmas now, Mommy?" Before I could answer, the kitchen door swung open again. It was my mother. She stood there, still in her burgundy sweater, her face pale. Her eyes darted from me to Lily, then back to me. She looked cornered. "Lily, darling," she said, her voice strained. "Why don't you come see the tree? The twins are in there." Lily slid off the stool and scampered into the living room, drawn by the siren song of the giant tree and her cousins. The door swung shut, and we were alone. The silence in the kitchen was louder than any music. "Your father is very upset with me," she began, not meeting my eyes. I didn't say anything. I just waited. She wrung her hands, a nervous gesture I hadn't seen in years. "Clara, when I said there was no space, I didn't mean. I just thought, with Mark's new girlfriend, and it being so important for him, and with everything you've been through, I thought it would be easier for you." "Easier for who, Mom?" My voice was flat, dead. "You posted a picture. You said, 'All my children.' You put out the old photo of us. Why? Why would you do that?" Tears welled in her eyes. They weren't the practiced, delicate tears she was known for. These were real, messy, because I was ashamed. The words burst out of her, a desperate confession. I was ashamed of what I was doing. I knew it was wrong. I knew it was cruel. But Beatrice's family, and your sister, her life is just so put together. And you're a mess, Clara. Your life is a mess. And I didn't want to have to explain it. I didn't want to see the pity in their eyes. For me, there it was. The unvarnished, ugly truth. It wasn't about space. It wasn't about stress for me. It was about her. her image, her perfect, curated life. My struggles were a stain on her reputation. The anger I'd felt earlier didn't return. In its place was a vast, hollow pity. My mother was a prisoner too. A prisoner of her own vanity, her own fear of judgment. Just then, the kitchen door creaked open again. It was my brother, Mark. He looked back and forth between our tear-streaked faces. "Whoa, what's going on in here?" he asked, his tone light, oblivious. My mother wiped her eyes quickly, plastering on a hostess smile. "Nothing, dear. Just a little mother-daughter chat," Mark shrugged. "Okay. Well, Beatrice is wondering where the—" Oh, his eyes landed on me, and a flicker of understanding crossed his face. "Clara, hey, I didn't know you were coming." "Neither did I said. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight. "Look, Mom, about Beatrice. I maybe oversold how important her family is. Her dad's a dentist, a really good one, but—" "Just a dentist." My mother stared at him, her facade cracking further, and Mark continued, looking genuinely remorseful. "When I saw that post you made, I felt like crap. I knew Clara and Lily weren't here. It didn't feel right." The foundation of my mother's lie was crumbling, exposed by her own son's casual honesty. The swinging door opened one more time. My father stood there, Lily holding his hand. His face was like thunder. "Eleanor," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "We are all going into the living room now, the entire family, and we are going to have a conversation." The performance was over. The reckoning had begun. My father herded us all into the living room. The festive atmosphere curdled into a tense, bewildered silence. Sarah stopped playing with the twins. Mark's girlfriend, Beatrice, looked politely confused. The Christmas tree lights twinkled merrily, a stark contrast to the storm brewing in the room. "Everyone, sit," my father commanded. He rarely used that tone. When he did, people listened. I sat on the edge of an armchair, pulling Lily onto my lap, creating a small island of us in the middle of their perfect room. My mother sat rigidly on the sofa, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, unable to look at anyone. My father stood by the fireplace, next to the mantelpiece with its damning photograph. "Your mother," he began, his voice resonating in the quiet room, "told Clara there was no space for her and Lily tonight," a collective intake of breath. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Mark looked at the floor. "I came out to take the trash," Dad continued, "and I found my daughter and my granddaughter sitting in a cold car in the dark, watching us through the window because they weren't welcome in their own home. The humiliation was now a shared experience." Sarah started to cry. "Mom, you didn't." And then Dad said, his voice trembling with a rage he was barely containing, "I find out your mother posted this." He gestured violently at the air, as if swatting the memory of the post away. "This lie, this performance, for what? For who?" He turned his gaze on my mother. "For strangers on the internet, Eleanor? For the Pembrokes and the Crawfords? People whose opinions you value more than the feelings of your own flesh and blood." My mother was weeping openly now, her shoulders shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered, the words meant for my father, but they hung in the air for all of us. "It's not me you need to apologize to," he said, his voice finally breaking. He looked at me, and his eyes were filled with a grief I'd never seen. "Clara, Lily, I am so sorry." I was in my study, oblivious. "I failed you both. This is my failure as much as anyone's." Lily, sensing the adult pain but not understanding it, buried her face in my neck. Then, my father did something I will remember for the rest of my life. He walked over to the mantelpiece, picked up the old, framed family portrait, and without a word, He placed it face down on the shelf. "The past is a nice place to visit," he said, his voice firm again. "But we live in the present. And in the present, this family is messy. It's complicated. It has divorce and financial struggles, and it makes mistakes. But it does not abandon its own. Not ever again." He walked over to the giant Christmas tree, its branches heavy with decades of expensive, delicate ornaments. He reached deep into its heart, past the shimmering glass baubles and the silk ribbons, and pulled out 2 clumsily wrapped presents. He brought them over and knelt before Lily and me. "These are for you," he said, his eyes glistening. From me, Lily, ever hopeful, took hers and tore off the paper. It was a set of building blocks, not a fancy electronic toy. Simple wooden blocks. My father looked at me. "Your mother wanted everything to be perfect, Clara. But perfect is fragile. It breaks." He gestured to the blocks. "You have to build something strong, something that can withstand a few knocks. That's what family should be." I opened my gift. It was a simple, leather-bound journal, and tucked inside was a check. It was for a significant amount of money, more than enough for a security deposit on a better apartment. It wasn't a handout. It was a foundation. "I should have done this months ago," he said quietly. "I'm sorry it took this for me to see." The spell was broken. The perfect Christmas was in ruins, but a real one was struggling to be born in its place. Sarah came over and hugged me, a real tight hug. "I'm so sorry, Clara. I should have said something. I knew it was wrong." Mark shuffled over. "Yeah, me too. That was really shitty of us." Beatrice nodded in agreement, looking genuinely appalled. My mother stood up, her face ravaged by tears. She walked slowly towards us. She didn't look at me. She looked at Lily. "Lily," she whispered, her voice raw. "Grandma made a very, very bad mistake. I was being a silly, scared old woman. Can you ever forgive me?" Lily, with the boundless grace of a child, looked up from her blocks and said, "It's okay, Grandma. You can help me build a castle." That was the final crack in my mother's armor. She sank to her knees and wrapped her arms around Lily, sobbing into her small shoulder. "Thank you, my darling. Thank you." She finally looked at me over Lily's head. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, Clara, but I am going to spend the rest of my life trying to earn it." We didn't have a perfect Christmas that year. The turkey was probably dry from being left in the oven too long. The conversation was stilted and awkward. The matching sweaters felt like a bad joke, but it was real. They said there was no space for me and my child. They had the nerve to post a lie for the world to see, but their lie forced a truth that our family desperately needed to hear. We stayed the night. The next morning, Christmas morning, there was a new present under the tree for Lily. From my mother. It was a child-sized toolkit. Pink, of course, but real. "Every woman should know how to build her own castle," my mother said, and for the first time in a long time, her smile reached her eyes. The greatest gift they gave me that Christmas wasn't the journal or the check. It was the shattering of their own illusion. It was the messy, painful, beautiful opportunity to build something new, something stronger. Not a perfect family, but a real one. And that was a gift worth waiting for in the cold.